welcome back. And of course, as was mentioned earlier in the show, there is a very special empowerment conference taking place this weekend. And joining us to be able to tell us more about it is the president of the International Black Women's Public Policy Institute, Barbara Perkins. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, and I do feel welcome. So thank you very much for having
You just
me.
arrived yesterday, actually.
We came yesterday.
Okay.
Correct.
So let's just start off by talking about the International Black Women's Public Policy Institute before we move into our conference.
Okay. Well, the International Black Women's Public Policy Institute is an 8-year-old Washington, D.C. based organization. It has 14 board members, women from around the world, Ghana and the Caribbean, and of course the U.S. The goal and purpose of the organization, or the mission, if you will, is to convene women from across the globe to sit together and talk about the issues that we think are critical to women, their families, and their communities. We then identify policy that is already written that can be a model throughout the world for women's enhancement. If there's no policy addressing the issues that we're facing, then we create the policy. So it's a simple mission, but it encompasses a lot.
So you would consider it a think tank?
Similar.
Yeah,
similar to being a think tank.
Now, since being in existence for 8 years, what have been some of the areas that you have decided to work on policies, and what has it been like going into countries or different areas and suggesting them?
So this work that we're doing is not new work. This is work that women have been doing for many years. So we're standing on the shoulders of great women such as Dorothy Irene Height, Rosa Parks, lots of women who have been in the struggle. Even the civil rights movement has an impact on the work that we do. But what we've decided to do is pick up on some of those issues maybe that are quiet issues where people are actually working in communities, doing their work locally. Because we believe that the local work that you do informs the international work. We started our organization looking at the issue of HIV and AIDS because we realized that issue impacts women across the globe. So we wanted to take a particular look at black women and how it really has been changing the lives of black women and their families. So that was the first issue. Our second year in existence, the Haiti earthquake happened. It changed our direction a little bit in that we turned our attention to helping women who were not necessarily on television being helped, and we thought, let's get into rural communities. Let's find those women in pockets of Haiti that might have been left out of the big picture. And so we got together in Washington, D.C. We actually found a family that we brought in to D.C. whose family was totally destroyed. Oh, thank you so much. And then we decided that we would look at ways to engage women's organizations on the ground in Haiti and support them in ways that they wanted to be supported. A third and very large issue that we've been working on for 4 years is the issue of human trafficking, especially as it relates to black girls, because our girls are being trafficked across the globe. Sometimes we forget when we're doing international work that what we see internationally starts right at home. So we began looking at cities across the states, and we found that human trafficking is a major crisis in cities across the U.S. So that's what we'll be doing.
And is that a part of the focus of what you'll be working with here as well?
Yeah, the theme of the conference here is Unfailing Bridges. Unfailing Bridges because, again, this is the work that women started centuries ago, right? We believe that the foundational work for how women do their work, how we think, the connection between our hearts and our heads is a unique model. It's an effective model. It includes everyone. We try to level the playing field by not judging people, but saying, let me meet you where you are. So we found that human trafficking is one of those issues where children in cities across the U.S., right in our own backyards, were being lured into these lives of just horrific crime. And we thought if we start there, just by understanding what they go through, sometimes they're identified as runaways. Sometimes they're identified as prostitutes. Sometimes they're identified as the bad girls in the community, right? Sometimes they're identified as the outcast. We wanted to normalize these women, these victims, and we wanted to say, if a girl is in human trafficking and she's under the age of 18 and she's having sex with an adult male, that's not prostitution, that's rape, because she's a child. So that's something, it's a really big issue. So we've had to sort of peel back the layers of understanding and really employ more sensitivity to the young women.
Yeah. Now, the aspect of the laws within the different countries obviously is one that you'll have to look at.
Absolutely.
And I know in Belize we have been continuously struggling in terms of leveling the age, especially when it comes to the definition of a child.
Yes.
And it has been something discussed, however, and there have been some recent changes, but we still have, with the very specific example of sexual consent, that a child can give consent at 16 years old to have sex. So in other words, it would not be a situation where it would be considered a crime. They're a child legally because they're under the age of 18, but at 16 they're able to give the age of sexual consent. Now I say all of that obviously to point out a situation, and I know you're very aware of, which is you can't, because the laws are set the way they are, it defines how the public sees the actions of a child at 16, 17, and even 18. How do you work, whether it'll be with the people in your conference or even in media appearances like this, to spread awareness that it still has the same ramifications as a younger child?
It's a great question. So the work that we're doing, one of the things we know foundationally, if you are going to impact or influence laws that are enforceable, that are sustainable, and ultimately you want the law to make things better. That's the whole reason for public policy, correct? Our job as a women's-centered organization is to focus on education for the purpose of change, positive outcome. So one of the things we're really sensitive to is not going into an area to poke at and to pick at and to judge the way the environment makes decisions around creating laws. That's the first thing. That's not our job. We've come to Belize not to poke at and judge and pick and choose what people should think and how they should think, but instead, as you said earlier, build awareness. So what happens to the life, to the humanity of a 16-year-old who is forced, that's the key word, forced to, because of, and it may not even look like force in the sense of I'm dragging you into a situation, but force because you don't have the maturity or the capability to make the decisions for yourself that are healthy decisions for quality of life. So we have to take a look at that. What we try to do is engage women in the communities where we are and say, how does it work here? Because what I've learned over the years is that women, no matter where you are, we have the same goal. We have the same heart intention, and that is to make sure, especially our children, are safe and that they are living a quality of life that really reflects joy. Women care about that. Women care about the security of her family. And so again, it's not about poking at the laws, but creating the awareness that allows change to happen that will influence and impact your community differently.
You know, some of the issues, as you're very clearly pointing out, are deeply rooted, and some would even say cultural.
Yeah.
In Belize specifically, one of the issues that we know happens as well, and there have been some small studies done so far to be able to look at the situation. It's commercial sexual exploitation of children.
Sure.
And we call it locally the sugar daddy syndrome.
Yeah.
Now, I hear what you're saying in terms of women or mothers wanting the best for their children. But in this particular situation, we're seeing where sometimes the parents are the persons forcing their child, their young girls, into these situations or encouraging it.
Yes.
And oftentimes when we hear from human services or other relevant authorities, this child carries a burden that if I do not do these horrific things being asked of me, then my younger siblings, who I care about.
Right.
Now, I say all of that because it's important that we paint a picture as to what is really taking place when it comes to human trafficking. People look at the brothels, for example, and they won't necessarily see the persons within those institutions as previous victims or current victims of human trafficking. But we can look outside so often and say, oh, the terrible things they do to children in other parts of the world, not realizing it's happening right next door.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get your feedback on that aspect, because we tend to have blinders on when it comes to what's happening within our own society. Like, it doesn't happen here, or not in my neighborhood, or no one I know, but the other people who go through it, it's terrible.
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah.
Well, there are three things that come up for me. Hurt people hurt people. So often, and studies have shown, that the very people, both men and women, who are perpetuators of this have been hurt themselves. So hurt people hurt people. That's one huge factor. And then you bring up the factor of culture. Desperation. Desperation can lead to everything bad that you can imagine. Families who are desperate to survive may in fact be attracted to the promises of what someone will offer if they offer up their 13-year-old, their 14-year-old. Desperation can lead to that. So again, not judging. Having to meet people where they are, which requires time. The easy fix will be to simply say, this type of people, it's over there, right? That's the easy fix. The more challenging, but yet sustainable, is if when we really do the assessment in the lives of people who this is impacting. So what is really going on with this family? Because that 14-year-old who's offering up her body out of desperation is also feeding her family, preventing her younger siblings from being the victims, feeling the weight, as you said, and the responsibility. If I don't do this, my family suffers. Desperation breeds that kind of unfortunate possibility. Again, how do you get into a community? How do you create laws? Help to shape and influence. One of the wonderful things I like about the work that we're doing is we go into a space, we talk about awareness, we find the women in those communities, and we dialogue about it. What do you feel? What do you think? We give women permission to think first with their hearts. And then we connect that to our intuitive way of knowing, because that's what God has given us. We have an ability to go deep inside and say, there's something not quite right with this. I'm not talking about the women with degrees. I'm talking about our women, our everyday woman. Something not quite right. if given an opportunity to be in a sister circle and talk about it and drill down without punitive impact, being free to really speak from your voice, your own voice, and knowing what that is, we can get somewhere. And out of those small conversations, we build and build and build, and then you start to see the framework for policy. And that's the kind of work we're doing. Again, it's so important not to go into communities. We're here in Belize. We're so happy to be involved with the sisters here. Yeah. And we're here to say, you tell us.
Yeah, it's a bottom-up approach.
We didn't come in to drop anything in. We didn't come to bring our own agenda. We came to say, is there any way that through a conversation with you and a relationship with you, that we could walk away from Belize feeling like we've learned, and so have you.
Yeah. You know, and mentioning the word agenda is probably the best to be able to say you don't come with an agenda, because oftentimes if somebody is visiting the country speaking about sensitive issues like this, the challenge is that people say, oh, you're bringing your foreign agenda.
Here they come. Here they come.
But what you're speaking about is more of a bottom-up approach. You want the information to be fed from the community members.
Right.
That's right. Let's get into just some of the relationship building between your organization and the persons here in Belize. How was the link made, and who will you be working with while you're here?
Oh, great question, because it's been just an amazing journey of getting to know some of the women here. But this idea started, of course, this is part of our mission, is to identify areas where we can go. We are fortunate to have Karina Mina, who's a local girl here, on our board. And in the conversations, Karina is back and forth to Belize. Her family is here. And in the conversation, she said, I would love for you to come to my home and just meet the women with the big juicy hearts in my home. And as a board, we decided that we wanted to begin our relationship. So we reached out to the Belizean consulate in Los Angeles. And the Honorable York is his name, Mr. York. He was so gracious. We went in, we had a bit of an orientation about the island. No, you're not an island. I just learned that yesterday.
We're in the Caribbean.
I just learned that yesterday. In fact, I have someone in the conference coming to, Mr. Bradley is coming to give us a little bit of a history lesson today.
See, that's the first thing you learned coming here.
So it's been a win already in 24 hours. But we learned that we were introduced first to Sonia Linares from the YWCA. And we tried to identify first larger organizations where we had some relationships already in place. We have 2 members of our board of directors as a part of the YWCA in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C. And we said, at least if we build a relationship through the YWCA, it can be something we can sustain. Because again, we have twofold mission. 1, to get to know you. 2, to find ways where we can support each other. So we knew we could build on that. We also know that the Y is known for its programs. Out of that relationship, then we met Carolyn Reynolds, who's doing WIN, this consortium of women's organizations. What a wonderful place to land. And then Joan Burks from her organization
BFLA.
Yes. And they're all on our program. They're part of this conference. We've been talking monthly for the last 6 months on just really trying to shape an agenda that was reflective of the things we want to do, but more importantly, inclusive of the ideas of the women here. So that's where we are. And then, of course, your First Lady here, Kim Simplest Barrows, is on our program this morning, and we're just totally moved by the work that she's doing around cancer awareness and the new Inspiration Center.
Fantastic. Now, who is your target audience?
Everyone. You know,
everyone or women?
Everyone. Because the education of men is just as important, if not more so. Right? So the conference attendees happen to be 99% women, because that's who we've invited. But the education, the messaging, is directed at both men and women. It's about empowerment, and empowerment is targeting both men, women of all ages, because we're never too old to learn, and we certainly are never too young to learn.
Now, in your format for the conference itself, how will it work?
So we have 3 days of just really intense programming. Started already 6:30 this morning. But last night we kicked off with a wonderful reception that was so great, hosted by the Belize City Council and the mayor. And that was just getting us, we got our little Belizean entertainment, the steel band, the garifunists, the drummers. It was absolutely amazing, the dancers. But today we kicked off the morning with just meditation and setting our intention for each day. Really reviewing our goals for the day. And then at 9 o'clock, we will have the official opening where we're inviting people to come out to the Caribbean, what's it called? The Hotel, Chateau Caribbean. Chateau Caribbean. We're inviting folks to come out and join us. 9 o'clock is our first session, and then we have a luncheon at noon. And then in the afternoon, we're going to have a huge round table conversation with women leaders both here and from the U.S.
That you have invited to join you along.
Yes.
Tell me about some of the invited guests.
Okay. There are 28 women who have traveled from Ghana, the furthest, who was just actually the woman Penelope Jones-Mensah just joined our board. And she is an attorney in Ghana doing amazing work through an organization called 40 Roses, the 40 Roses Foundation, and they do a lot of work around human trafficking awareness and empowerment of young girls and such. And then we have a sister from Gloria Dill from Bermuda who's traveled in, who also works at a law firm. We have a medical physician, chief medical officer for 6 clinics around Southern California area, Dr. Tracy Robinson. We have senior directors from the YWCA representing their national office as well as the Los Angeles office. Women in IT, because of course social media and technology is huge. So we have Kathy Say, who's the president and CEO. And the predators that lurk on social media. On social media. So we have people who are in those areas of industry that can really help us when we're having this conversation. Ultimately, it's about solutions. So we've identified the places where we need to look for solutions. And then I can't not talk about the women who are sponsoring this conference. So we have the California Black Health Network, which is an awareness public policy organization that really focuses on the health and well-being of women and girls, from emotional health. And I heard you in your opening talk about emotional stability and how important that is, spiritual health, and your physical health. And then Toyota Motor Sales was one of our sponsors, and we're proud to say that their national manager is on our board of directors. Fantastic. So that's kind of a snapshot of who's there. What is the hope when you have a roundtable with persons with such diverse experiences within their own areas and exposure in other countries? What is your hope in having them come together to discuss this issue? Yeah, the most important thing for me is that we first begin to realize how exactly alike we are. You know, how our deepest concerns really mirror and parallel each other. That's awareness is the key first. Once you're aware, once you know, you can't unknow. Once you're aware, then the ability is to take action. So the action that we're looking for is a collective thought. How do we begin to get on the same page? Let's start there. And once we're on the same page, we can start to influence through our political process, right? We can influence. Now, in Belize specifically, we have seen the issue of human trafficking being an issue across ethnicities. Oh, yeah. Looking absolutely. And you are a black woman empowerment organization. Yes. Are you being inclusive in this process as well, understanding that a large population of
children and women who are trafficked are also Hispanic.
There's a lot of work to be done in the world,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of work. What I'm clear about is we need all hands on deck to do this work. International Black Women's Public Policy, this is our sliver of the work.
Yeah.
It doesn't exclude anyone else. It simply says, this is our lane, this is our leg. If there's anything that we're doing that is replicatable, that we can repeat in your community, do that. If you want to speak with us, come. Any opportunity to have that, the very same way that we say this is not just about women, it's about women and men. It works the same way. So, but separating out to do the work that you have in front of you is a smart thing to do. It allows you to drill down and use your resources in a deeper way, as opposed to going wide and not being able to have sustainable change. We have chosen to go deep
In one area.
in one area.
And at the end of the conference, after you have been able to have a conversation with all your attendees,
Yes.
And really getting what will be your foundation for the policy, how do you ensure, because issues of this kind are need a multi-sectoral approach. You know, you're talking
Absolutely.
about human development issues, you're talking about fundamental education issues. Sometimes it boils down to employment, disability,
Yes.
it could be many different issues that
Yes.
contribute to this problem. So how do you keep the ultimate goal realistic? Because really what you need is almost an entire do-over sometimes of systems when you identify a problem like this and try to work out a solution.
So here's the difference, I think, with the way women work. This isn't a one-time approach. This is our way of life. This has to be transferable from one generation to the next. The work that we're doing now is not new. This is work that our mothers and our foremothers began in different ways. But as we grow, as technology gets better, as we are more aware, we can transfer our messages better, deeper, faster. So our job is to keep talking, keep the conversation going, make sure that we bring young women on board. You know, I do a lot of mentoring, but I've been mentored well. And my job is to take what I've gotten and pass it on. Sometimes in our organization, this is a wonderful observation, not a criticism. But sometimes in leadership, we overstay the mission. What I'm really happy about is to see you doing your work as a young woman. Sometimes leaders overstay the mission, as opposed to bring a young woman and sit her right next to you. Sit her right here, so that she will learn and see and feel and get that interest in her community. If we do that, this conversation never stops. It continues.
Is that something that is a part of the conference itself, talking about women? Because let me give you a bit of background. Earlier this week, I had a panel conversation with young women in Belize who were trying to make their mark in their own sector. We've had a software developer, a bodybuilder, and a young woman working to advocate sexual and reproductive health rights. But what is interesting, and it's something I think we all are aware of as women, but we don't speak about it as often, is how difficult it is to get the support of other women. It's a challenge for the group that I spoke with, because they were in two of them were in more male-dominated roles. So they're already trying to carve a space for themselves.
Yes.
But the challenge they have is also battling the perceptions of other females as well. And finding mentors has been a difficult process for them. So in terms of having the audience that you have, and since you have a passion and a very good understanding as to what mentorship has done to develop you and how you choose to take the time to pass that on to others.
Mm-hmm.
How do you bring that conversation about to this group of women that you will have as well?
So important that we do it, you know. What I'm proud of is that the International Black Women's Public Policy, our office is based in Washington, D.C., and our board members are all across the country and the world, really. But our headquarters, our associate director, is a 27-year-old young woman. She is our eyes and ears. She represents us in Washington, D.C. She's on Capitol Hill at the White House representing us. And I have the ultimate confidence in her ability because I've known her since she was 15 years old. I've mentored her since 15, among other mentors that she's had. She is with us in Belize. She's here in Belize. She'll be presenting on Saturday, so I will ask young women to come out and meet with her. Her name is Ebony Rice. So that's an example, that's a model. And what I try to do sometimes, it's much easier to demonstrate versus telling someone how to be. Sometimes it's much easier, much more effective to demonstrate that. So when Ebony shows up representing an international organization in her full 27-year-old body and her capable mind, then it sends a message out to other women's organizations that the fear of having young women, because most of why we don't transfer leadership as readily is based in fear. Lack of understanding. I'm real clear about who I am as a leader. Very clear. I'm very clear that Ebony's and others will do better if I am with them, if I'm supportive of them. And then you give them an opportunity to show their leadership, demonstrate their leadership. Once you see it's there, you feed that. If you keep feeding that, it gets better and better and better. And then I will say to the young women, be patient. Be patient. I was that one who wasn't so patient. There were times when I was sitting there, the youngest woman, the first time I was on a national board of directors. I was in my early 30s and all the women were much older and had been in the movement. And I remember once I raised my hand and I had something I thought profound to say. And I did. And the leader of the organization, who was my mentor, didn't address it at the moment. But 5 o'clock the next morning, she gave me a call and she said, let's talk this through. Let me show you how to step up. You don't always have to be provocative. You don't always have to be the smartest one in the room, although we know how smart you are, because if we didn't know how smart you were, you wouldn't be here. That was a positive lesson. So she gave me a little spank, but she also lifted me up.
Lifted you, yeah. And she also made the choice to reach out.
Yes, she did.
And that's part of what I think is I was getting at in terms of talking to, because it's making that first step. I think the young women that we speak with very often here, young persons, I should say, on this show, that is what's missing. It's the reach out. There's a hand ready to receive. Yes. But there are not as many hands reaching out to help. And I think that's one of the things collectively as women and as other persons in society here that we need to work on. So hopefully it becomes a part of
I hope so.
your conference.
We're going to address mentoring in a big way. I just released a book last month on mentoring. January is National Mentoring Month in the U.S. And I released a book with 47 stories from contributing authors about mentoring, because it is the power of leadership. It is the power. So to the extent that your audience, the women here in Belize, those senior leaders, the wisdom that we have as mothers and grandmothers and aunts and mature women, what's important for us is to make sure our voices are heard, but also transferred, that the messages are moved. And it's so much easier for you to reach your peers than for me to reach them. Because sometimes they don't want another mother. They don't want another auntie. They don't want another godmother. but they want a friend. And I feel the same way. It's very different the way I sit and speak with my peers. Very different. We communicate on a different level. So we want young women to do that. And I would ask folks, young women, to be patient. Be patient with us. Know that we love you, and sometimes that love might feel smothering. We're going to release it a little bit. And I'll ask the senior women here, the leaders, to give the women a chance. Let them prove themselves, and let them slip and fall every now and then. That's okay. We did it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a part of the process.
Yes. Yeah.
So, just in closing, is the conference at this point still open for people to come? People who are watching this morning
on the site registration,
inspired to be a part of this.
Yeah.
So they can come today.
Come and get registered.
Starts
today.
at 9.
Starts at 9.
And on Saturday and Sunday.
Yes.
Same time.
Yes.
All right.
9 o'clock.
Well, I wish you the absolute best on this journey for the next 3 days. I'm sure it's going to be a lot of positive energy.
Yes.
And hopefully very productive as well.
Thank you. And if you are free, you come and join us. Be our guest.
All right.
Okay.
Thank
you so very much.
And welcome to Belize, you and your team.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
I'm going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, it's the focus on the national football team and their upcoming game against the Cayman Islands. So stay tuned.